Hello, CHistrue, and it's a slightly better hair day than last time, but I'm not going to push my luck because it's not that great. Today I want to talk about staying human in the age of computers. We're going to talk about transhumanism and the so-called next step in human evolution, but how to stay human in a technological future. I think it's a very important subject, and I'm going to come to some conclusions that might disappoint some of you, but I hope that you'll bear with me. First of all, I want to talk about why it is that I go to some of these websites or YouTube channels talking about how the moon landing, they claim the moon landing was a hoax, or they claim the sky is glass, or the stars aren't real, and that kind of thing, and you're wondering why I'm even bothering. And the answer is, I'm going there, strangely enough, not because I worship technology, or that I worship NASA, or that I think that NASA has all truth and that I'm defending NASA. Quite the contrary. I'm going there because what I believe these channels are promoting is a kind of worship of NASA, is a kind of worship of technology. They're promoting without realizing it, they're promoting a transhumanist meme. And that is that NASA has this technology to create a moon landing where there wasn't one. That they're so good that the technological matrix is so good that it can affect our perception of reality that great that we can't fight for our freedom, that we can't, and by that I mean nonviolently and democratically, that we can't stand up for what is right because, well, maybe they faked the moon landing, or maybe even the night sky itself is really glass, or really the earth is concave, or something like that. At least in the case of the alien YouTube stuff, it's kind of fun. But something like that is just boring. It'd be a boring universe to live in. And yet, strangely enough, in a strange kind of way, it prefigures the kind of world we actually would live in if we turned it all over to computers to run it. Yes, I said run it. Because that idea is in the mainstream is being openly promoted in terms of handing our society over to robots to actually run it. They would become our bosses. They would become our leaders. They would become our intellectuals would start to become AI. This is a transhumanist idea that is now being promoted. And there's also the idea of fusing carbon and silicon, that we become computers. To which point I would say that in any so-called next step of evolution, we have by definition an untested experiment. We do not know how values like empathy, how values like creativity, or even the values like scientific curiosity that led to this state of affairs, how long that would continue. I know that these everything's a hoax websites probably don't approve of transhumanism, or they don't agree with it, but they don't realize how, in a strange way, they're upholding its central premise. The same I would say with a lot of the, and this is going to offend some people, with a lot of the anarcho-primitivists, or the people who, and I don't want to lump you all in with the Unabomber because I understand there are a lot of differences, but when he essentially stated that we've got to get rid of technology because if we don't, all these terrible things will happen. Well, the problem is we're not going to get rid of technology. We are a tool-making primate. That is our nature. And what the Unabomber essentially said is all these terrible things will happen and we can't avoid them. In a nutshell. I know he proposed some kind of alternative society where we go back to the hunter-gatherer period, but that's not going to happen. Even an EMP, even a solar flare, will not do that because we will regroup, we will rebuild, and we will be back on track destroying the planet because sadly we will not have learned all that much unless we make the choice to do so. And this, I believe, is the real alternative to a future technological matrix that does not let human values like creativity or compassion flourish. The actual alternative is not some idealized past that never was. It is not some conspiracy subculture about things that are not. It is about us using democratic engagement and doing the one thing that I will agree with the transhumanists on, even though from a different standpoint. The transhumanists will say that we've got to get beyond our carbon nature and go to some kind of religious utopia or platonic utopia of pure silicon by moving up, by a kind of hierarchy in which those who've moved up have the right to rule. That is their way of getting beyond our organic carbon nature. I believe we have to get beyond our evolutionary past in a different sense. That we have to move beyond hierarchicalism. That we have to move beyond domination. We've got to get beyond this whole boss-employee thing, or we're going to find ourselves more and more dehumanized. Exactly as was predicted. Erich Fromm predicted that, and his predictions are coming to pass. And so that is my way in which we get beyond the limitations of our evolutionary past in order to remain human, in order to remain, in the best sense of the term, animals. Not in the worst sense, not in the sense of being non-spiritual or non-intellectual, but I'm saying in the best sense of being alive, of being physical, of seeing this beautiful green day and blue sky. It's going to be Passover for Jews, it's Good Friday for Christians. And so, in order to be able to appreciate it, you have to have the aesthetic values. You have to have the values of creativity, of literature, of the ability to relate to people. We stay human in the age of computers by staying engaged with one another on a horizontal level. And yes, we will use this computer technology as part of that. It may well be that the transhumanists are right, and that at some point we will have bionic limbs, and this really will offend some people. I understand that. But we might have a lot of the improvements that they talk about. But I do not believe that that should be run by the people running the planet now. That they should be the ones to have the sole hegemony over that. The ruling class will always take its class interests and project them out as universal values. That is true of conservative right-wing oilmen. That is true of liberal fashion designers and tech industry leaders. That is true of wealthy people, period. It's part of, again, that evolutionary past that we have to move beyond, but we also have to acknowledge. All of us would do that in that position. We would have, this is where I disagree with Marx. I don't think that there's some them out there. I think it's all of us. Okay? Or are they left-wing anarchists? They would say that there's a them, a 1%. Yeah, there is, but I mean, it's all of us. We all have to progress beyond that nature within ourselves in order for society to evolve to our form of humanity 2.0. My problem with the transhumanists is not that they're too creative, but that they're too limited. Most of them, I don't know about all, but most of them project a future very much like the present, with bosses and employees, with some people who are important and some people who are expendable. That is not the future that I want. And at long last, I would say that, as I said before, we need to avoid retreating into conspiratological subcultures. Also, we have the religious eschatological meme that states that this is all fulfillment of some kind of inevitability. Well, the problem is, if it is, it's just the same as with the Unabomber. We can't avoid it. But I believe that if we live in a universe of incredible evolutionary diversity, now the religious would take issue with that, but if it is true that we live in a universe of incredible evolutionary diversity and Darwinian randomness, then there's any number of ways that something could come to be and could turn out. And with human free will and human intellect, we can affect that. And I do not want to cede that human intellect and creativity to the people planning the transhumanist future in their image. Because I want those of us who want to remain human to exercise that same rationality, that same creativity, that same free will, and not retreat into subcultures, either hippie subcultures or conspiracy subcultures or religious subcultures, and then cede that power and externalize it completely. The future is yours and mine if we come together and plan for it. Whether it's technological or whether it's not, I want the future to be a human place. Let's make it happen.